But first of all, hi again, I'm Simone. Some of you have seen me in the plenary. I'm the lead facilitator for cultural direction setting, and I've also tandemed with Torrey on this group. We were kind of switching off. Again, Zoom etiquette, please mute yourself. There will be time for questions when you can just unmute yourself, and I'll invite you to ask your question. Let's keep this civil. I know this is a very heated topic that, you know, people have strong feelings about. Believe us, we know. We've been in all of those feelings. So yeah, there will be one presentation with time for questions, and then we'll open it up for questions on the whole thing. So I'm going to ask the cultural direction setting folks in this room to introduce yourselves quickly. Just say, you know, your name, your camp affiliation, and then share one moment, memory, or insight that you've had throughout this cultural direction setting process. Andy, why don't you kick us off? You're muted. Can't unmute yourself. Michael, can you unmute Andy?
All right, there we go. Hi, everybody. This is my first time doing this, so this is pretty wild. Andy Mann with Group 6 and also with Star Roadhouse, 20-year veteran on the playa. And one of my favorite moments was just realizing that how hard and long many different groups have been working to discover what needs work and to find a path forward. It's really inspiring to get to know so many amazing thinkers out there and contributors and people that really care so much about our culture. It feels really good to be a part of the group.
I'll jump in and go next. Hi, I'm Zhang. I'm a founder and one of the theme camp organizers for Suspended Animation. I worked on CS Phase 1 and worked with this group on Phase 2. And I'm just going to say exactly the same thing that Andy just did, which is that I mean, in some ways it wasn't a surprise, but it just continually has impressed me, like on a weekly basis, how really dedicated everybody is to making Burning Man just absolutely fantastic. I mean, really, really dedicated. A lot of hard work, really calm thinking, and sticking with it the whole way through. I'm super impressed.
Prince, why don't you go next? Looks like Prince can't unmute himself. There we go. You're unmuted.
Yay. I forgot the question now, but I'm Prince. I'm with Yummy RUMInation. Hello, everyone. Excited
share one memory insight that you had throughout this cultural direction setting process.
Having a call every Tuesday for 90 minutes. That was fucking rough, but amazing. That's what I remember.
A lot of work, a lot of extra work. Okay, President, hi there. Can you unmute yourself?
Yes. Yeah, I think I'm unmuted now. Hi, everyone. President, real name Shay Hardy. I'm the outside services manager for Burning Man. I've been the manager since 2016, but I've been a burner since 2005. Had my hands in all sorts of participatory stuff, from being a theme camp lead to honorarium artist to helping support an art car, all the things. But one of the things that I found most fascinating and inspiring about the CDS process is being put in a group with such a diverse subset of our community and learning that it's really important for everyone to have their time to say who they are and kind of all of us to get to know our temperatures and to get comfortable with each other. And then we really got to dig our heels in and get to work. But it was that initial, we didn't get a lot of work done in the beginning, and that's because we had to do the work knowing each other. And now I can say that I have come out with friends that I only know virtually. Some of them I know, of course, not virtually, but some of them absolutely. And it's been fantastic.
Thanks, President. And then we have Papa Bear.
Hi, I'm Papa Bear. I've been on the placement team since 2013, been part of this group 6. It's been a lovely, long, hard process, and it's been really good to work so closely with all these people that you all are getting to meet right now.
Cool. So let's jump in. Zhang, will you share your screen with us and talk to us about how does this whole process work of like how are we envisioning to like weed out camps that are doing it wrong and support them or punish them?
Oh, wow. That is language I do not associate with you, Simone. Wow. Okay, so no, that's actually a really good lead into this. So in the course of all of these discussions, it kind of became clear to us that we needed an actual system or a framework for addressing camps who exhibit, problematic behavior. And you notice that I'm being really careful around that language, and it's tricky to figure out. I think that any one of the groups, the subgroups who worked on CDS may have addressed this particular issue. It happened to be that we did. So what we're going to talk about is a remediation system for place camps who are, for lack of a better word, problems or problematic. This is really distinct from some of the other discussion that's been had today around, for example, tiering. And note that the tiering system is the first time that we're seeing that in public. And this is the first time that we're going to talk about the remediation system. So both of these are in draft and proposal stages. Actually, not even in proposal stages necessarily. They're really being drafted as we speak. But these are different systems. So we're going to talk about the system for theme camps or behaviors that are problematic. So let me get into sharing my screen. And we're going to kind of work through this a bit. Okay. Okay, so remediation of camps. An interesting thing around this is the language that we've chosen, which is a little more pedestrian and a little less burnery than usual. Remediation being one of those words. And we chose it really specifically because it has to do with correcting or improving upon a thing. So that's what we're going to talk about. So here are the things that we're trying to solve for. We want to bring clarity to the system, because right now there's kind of an idea of, yeah, things kind of get addressed probably in some way. We want to be really clear about what the system is and what it's going to be. We also want to solve for allowing our frontline placers, the folks who are out there doing the curation work and really working with theme camps to focus on the core parts of their job and not have to spend all the time and effort and energy on addressing problems or even figuring out, is this a problem, right? We want there to be, in dealing with problematic behavior, we want there to be some cross-checking in that system. We want there to be consensus. We want it to be there to be the idea that it wasn't just one person's call. Several people looked at this from a few different angles, and they all agreed this is a problem and it needs to be fixed. And the last thing is that we want camps who are struggling to have plenty of guidance and feedback and input along the way. And we also don't want to automate a system that allows people to slow walk their compliance. Like if there are things that need to be addressed, we want them to get addressed in the appropriate amount of time, okay? So there's a fundamental premise that underlies this, which is this, and this is not a thing that we say comfortably. It's an uncomfortable thing, but it's true. It is possible to lose the privilege of being placed at being a place camp. As in, like, no different from you're not getting placed this year to you will no longer be a placed camp at Burning Man. There should be a process to get there. That process should be balanced and have multiple points of input. And we do not want to create a framework that is so bogged down in details that people can basically lawyer their way out and say, well, you said 25 RVs is okay, and we only have 24, or whatever the thing is, right? So that's how we approach this. So pictures. Let's look at some diagrams that basically lays out what we're getting into. So this is an overview of the system that we have in mind. And the things, there are kind of three teams. There's frontline placement, the folks that we all know and love. There's audit, which is a word that we've all wanted to replace and haven't come up with a better one yet. And then there's remediation. These are three separate teams, and the proposal is that all three of these teams report into the placement manager. So the placement manager oversees this as a group of people, but they're distinct teams, right? And this is the overall system. So to kind of dig into how the system will work, let's look at some examples. The most common path that we expect that most camps will experience is basically no change. You apply for your placement application. There are no major issues that have to be dealt with. There's not really even any follow-up that needs to be done. Things look good. So you go into the placement process and you work with your placer, just like you know it. No difference whatsoever. Occasionally, though, there may be camps that we need to do some follow-up on. We need to find out what's going on. So for example, my camp is incorporated as an LLC under the name of my theme camp. And that might be a thing that a placer is, and I'm saying this because our placer actually contacted us a few years ago and said, can you tell us what's going on with that thing and explain how this works, please? So if that's true, if there are questions that need to be asked, if there's scrutiny that needs to be applied, then we have a team that's called audit. Audit works with the frontline placers, and they're the people who go and do the digging to say, what is going on with this thing? How come you need this much space? What is the story with all of these outside services that are happening? Are you really bringing a 1.5 million pink flamingos? Like whatever the question is, right? And can't you outsource the pink flamingos for that many? Anyway, the audit team does the asking, and audit could look at this thing and say, yeah, it turns out it's fine, or maybe you could make some changes, but it's a very brief process. And it's possible that an audit team could look at it and say, yeah, those RVs are actually, it turns out with some digging, I think we have a problem here. And so that might get passed on to remediation, okay? The last one is this. What if there are major problems? What if the camp in question last year installed an oil derrick on their theme campgrounds and spilled oil all over the place and so on and so forth? Is it possible to just send a camp straight into remediation? And the answer is, yeah, sure. It's possible that if we don't need to send them through audit, we may just send them straight. We may take them out of the normal placement process, send them over to remediation. Okay. So at this point, the question should probably be, well, what does remediation mean? Remediation is like an ancillary placement team. They're the team who deals with problem camps. If there's a camp that has like a fantastic theme, everything is going really great, but they have a particular band of behavior that is problematic to the point of being toxic, then the folks that they're going to be talking to are the remediation team. They're a distinct set of people. So it's not your happy-go-lucky frontline placer. It's your remediator who sits down and says, here's what we see that's going on, and here's our plan of action that we need to see you engage with. Okay. Remediation is charged with what may be a long-term process of bringing a camp back into compliance with what our community standards are. That's what that team does. They are different from the frontline placers. They are different from the camp support team, for example, who gives consulting and advice. Instead, these are the folks who say, this is what we need to see from you in order, if you wish to continue to be a place camp here at Burning Man. We think that very few camps are going to be involved with remediation, but that's how that works. Some real quick questions before we open it up that I want to talk through. One, is this the same thing as the theme camp assessments and the tiering system? The answer is no, it's really very different and distinct. That tiering system, even though it has a little bit of remedial kinds of qualities to it, like you're not getting as many DGS or something like that. That system is about encouraging camps to step up their game and really do great stuff. This is a system for dealing with camps who have been distinctly problematic in some way. Okay. 2, if you're in remediation, what might happen, and ultimately that's a judgment call. There is not a prescribed set of steps that a camp has to do X and Y and Z, and that's because the issue that may bring you to this team is going to be different from the one that brought another camp in. So it might just be, yeah, we want you to work with a mentor, but it could also be like, we want to see the following things. And I'm making this up off the top of my head. The remediation team might look at another camp and say, we need you to take a year off because you need to get yourself operationally fit and you're not able to do it. Okay. 3, is remediation a death sentence because we're short on space? The answer is no. You can we anticipate that you can be working with the remediation team, but also get placed that year, because the issue is like, yeah, we really need you to fix a thing, but your theme is fantastic. We really love having you. Okay. Next question. Is there a second chance? And the answer is, this is your second chance. If you land in remediation, you have had long conversations with your placer. You've probably had conversations with the audit team. And now we're giving you the thing that says, this is your chance to set yourself right. Okay. And the last one is, will it always be a long process? No, it's entirely possible that a theme camp could do something so egregious that they very swiftly go to remediation, and remediation looks at it and says, this isn't fixable. We're not planning for that by any means, but it's possible. Okay, so there's that. That's the presentation. I'm gonna stop the share, and you can get to questions, input, things like that.
Yeah, and right now I would love to hear mostly the questions just related to the remediation process. I know some of you have been sitting on your questions since the plenary presentation. We're going to get to those, I promise, but right now the question specifically on remediation. There's one from Dr. Bob. Maybe the placement audit team is the placement reality team. More of a comment cloaked as a question, but
or a name suggestion, maybe.
We'd add virtual in there with the coronavirus happening.
We would love to have a different name other than audit. We keep trying things out because audit just sounds awful, and then we keep going, well, but audit is what it is. So yeah.
Inventory is suggesting clarification instead of audit process. Spanky's Y Bar has lots of paddles, whips, floggers. We would be happy to assist with remediation.
Yeah, who's been a naughty theme camp? Tell me what you did wrong, etc. Yeah, I'm familiar with this actually.
Camp evolution team is another one. Okay, any other questions? Put your name in the chat, then we know to unmute you if you can't unmute yourself. If you can do it yourself, then just do it and ask your question.
All joking aside, and believe me, there's a rich vein of humor that can be mined here, but one of the things I'm curious about is when people read this, what's your gut telling you? Are you looking at this and going, this is awful? Or are you saying, oh, thank God, what are you thinking?
Yeah, and Prince is asking, is this process a shock to everyone? You can just unmute yourself too and hop in here. So some reactions maybe. How does this sound? We're still, it's still in draft mode. So this is really something you can input to question. I see Jim. Can you unmute yourself? Yes.
Hello, everybody. Admiral Painjoy, 23-year burner, 20-year team camp leader. I want to thank everybody that's running this. You guys are doing a great job. And I'd like to say that this has been a long time coming, and I'm very happy to hear it. There have been so many theme camps that have been gaming the system. I've been trying to get DGS tickets in unscrupulous and nefarious ways. So I am so glad to hear that we're talking about this. So just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Is it okay if I ask a question about getting low interactivity, or does that not count in this?
Zhang, what do you think?
Sure, ask the question, and then because I think it might actually be illustrative. Because somebody asked here, said it'd be great to have some specific hypotheticals, which is neat. So what do you got?
Awesome. Yeah. So my camp is in good. We were in good standing. We were green and stuff, but we got low interactivity because our structure was built a little too late, and we were just trying really hard. But I just don't know if that puts you into this category. Like, I'm not sure. That's like my main question.
I have an answer, but what I'd love to do is put Papa Bear on the spot and say, "Hey, Papa Bear, you working in the system? What would you go to remediation or what?"
Yeah, I mean, I think I answered you in the chat too. That's really a specific one for your place room in 2019. But
yeah, I tried to give a different question this time. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So I mean, I think that's still the normal placement process. It's not something that's like a red flag situation. It's just something that happened to you. So I don't think you'd go into this remediation process or the quote unquote audit team for that kind of thing.
Well, that's great news. Thanks.
So examples. I'm going to make up an example. So say while we're reviewing questionnaires, we might look at a camp and go, hey, I wonder if this camp is actually doing a concierge service in their camp, and they're selling spots in their camp for a high ticket value and making a profit, but we're not sure. We would send that to the audit team to investigate more. And if the answer was yes, they would go to remediation. If the answer was no, they're just doing something not that bad, it would go back to the placement process.
I'm just seeing this now. Papa Bear, are you making the map public?
This is 2019.
Just joking. It's one of the hot spots in the cultural direction setting process. So here's a question from Astral Headwash. Are there cases where the process doesn't start with the placement app? For example, if placers or Space Force realize there's a major problem either on Playa or shortly thereafter, can they proactively get the camp to remediation?
So yes, actually, the process that we presented is pretty simplified. But for example, President has been contributing to this this whole system as well. But President works with OSS, and OSS might be going, yeah, this camp over here. I mean, they get a killer theme and they have great things. Like everything is really fantastic, but they really verbally abuse. Like. It is awful working with them when they work with their service providers, and it's creating a problem. And well, we think that this needs to go, and then that could get referred over to remediation, and remediation might say, hey, you know what, we're picking this one up. So sure, Rangers could say, we think maybe this is a candidate for this thing. Well, wait. There's one last thing that's really important to say, which is, all of these three teams exist within placement, and all of them report to the placement manager. So they're not like, completely separate teams in that way. They're staffed separately, but their placement manager is the person who's overlooking the whole thing.
I want to add that sometimes there's things that don't come to light until we're actually on Playa and visibly can see it in person to person. And so then we'd be coming back from the event and starting that process with those camps that we've unveiled.
So are there any more questions specifically on the remediation process? Going once, going twice. I can't see hands, so if you want to talk, please put your name in the chat. Drew is confused. Drew, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, I'll just read it. I'm confused a little by remediation versus not placed, not in good standing. Could you clarify if possible?
You bet. The first thing I want to say, Drew, is that the folks who are writing up a system that results in not placed, not in good standing, are completely separate human beings from the ones who are writing the system for mediation, which means that we are very likely to connect these things together. And make them actually plug into each other in some way. It is very likely, my guess, and I'm speaking only for myself right now, is that my guess is that those things are going to have a connection between them. But it's also worth noting that there are a lot of reasons, and I'm kind of like watching for Papa Bear's reaction and also Andy's reaction to this a little bit as I say it. I can imagine a lot of reasons why a theme camp, for example, would not get placed that have nothing to do with remediation. You know, it's like, well, you've proposed a really shitty theme. And that's not a thing we remediate, it's just your lane. I mean, to be blunt, right? Or it could be you as a camp are brand new and you really don't quite know what you're doing. We might suggest you go over and work with the camp support team, for example, but we're not putting in a remediation because you're going to cause a problem, right? And for that matter, to emphasize, you could be put into, your camp could go to remediation because you have a very distinct problem that needs to get fixed, but you're getting placed because your theme is fantastic and everything else is great. Okay.
So I just want to point out, Level, who joined us, said remediation is process, not placed, not good standing is a decision outcome. So that's one distinction. Level, do you want to say more there? If not, just
no. Hi everyone.
Hi.
Yeah, I think remediation gives people an opportunity, gives camps an opportunity to do it right and to say that, you know, if they've made a mistake and they're willing to course correct, do that. And if they didn't realize they made a mistake, then that's part of the learning process and we want to honor that. So I think the remediation process assumes that people will be able to do things right eventually, if not in that year, in the following year. And the standing is always just a final decision that we make. So we in less structured ways actually do that right now. We don't have a remediation program, we don't call it that, but there are ways that we address camps that are, you know, doing things wrong. And I think that Humano is probably the most famous one from most recent memory, but it takes a while for us to feel like we need to publicly announce to the world that there's a failure here, because I think we also want to give people a chance to succeed, and we actually have far more examples of success than not.
Thanks, Level. And then Machine said, placement involves the entire team and any discrepancies perceived actual for discussion. So the placement team is very, you know, they have a lot of conversations with each other. So before we jump in the wider conversation, any more on the remediation? And by the way, there was a great comment from Taylor. If we see things that are obviously wrong, like camps, turnkey camps selling online tickets for 10K or more with amenities, who can we tell? You should definitely point that out. You would help placement a lot and our city and our culture. And there's, you know, you can either email placement@burningman.org or doingitwrong@burningman.org, and screenshots and photos really help. Okay, then, yeah, Andy.
Oh, I just wanted to underscore the comment earlier that Zhang made, that remediation is your second chance. There's a whole community out there looking out for each other. There are placers you can talk to before it has to go into this remediation process. So remediation is something that is not going to be applied to a wide number of camps. It's, you know, hopefully these things can be resolved in these other ways that already exist.
Yeah, it's been really interesting, by the way, in working through this. Boy, it's taken us weeks to work through this and get to the point of comfort. And it's been interesting because some of the people who contributed this are folks who are like, well, you know, I've been talked to about my, you know, my problematic behavior. And it's kind of like, part of it is like, okay, is there a way I want to be talked to about stuff that I feel comfortable with? But there's also this thing about like, also, I've camped next to a couple of camps who definitely need this shit, right? And so there's this kind of relief of knowing that could happen. It's been very interesting because I have to look at my own theme camp. Like, an example I bring up a lot is I may be, like Suspended Animation may be the only theme camp in the entire city. This is the only one that I know of that actually builds a fence, an actual real live fence, totally in violation of cultural norms. We believe that we have a very clear reason for doing so, and a very good reason to doing so. But, you know, if audit came and asked us a question, frankly, I would think that's a valid question and we'll give an answer. And if they're like, we need you to fix your shit, I'd probably be like, well, I don't really want to, but okay, you know, great, I'll work, you know, we go to remediation and we'll be like, all right, here's, I think, how we're going to fix that. So, yeah, all right.
Okay, so there's a question that somebody has been sitting on since the plenary. Rob, Spicy Roberto, do you want to ask your question in person or you want me to read it? If you want to ask it, just unmute yourself and do it. I won't hear you.
Reading it is fine.
Okay. So we pay a camp member who runs commercial trucking business a standard commercial rate for shipping to and from Black Rock City because he cannot afford to gift us something close to $5,000 of commercial shipping for a shipping container attached to a semi. This is a camp member on playa, pays dues, and his camp performs his camp duties. We perform the transaction off playa. The semi contains significant part of our interactivity as well as supplies. Is this kosher or do we have a problem? So here we're going to what's okay, what's not okay. President, do you want to take that one?
Sure, yeah, I can take that one. He's your camp member, is that correct? And he's just participating in your camp? He just happens to be a trucker?
Correct.
We have people who have campmates that deliver trucking stuff all the time that are truckers that just deliver to their camp because they're doing as if he's not, it's not his business, right? He's a camp member.
In this case, the camp member is an independent owner operator.
The issue, so government has is the issue they start bringing in things for other camps. Well, yes, because that would be a commercial transaction.
Right.
I guess the best way to talk about it would be like the bike camps. Why we don't have bike rental camps anymore is because they were transacting with, well, I think we're going to be getting into this in a bit, aren't we? Can we hold off on this for now or do I continue?
No, we're in it now. We're in just answering general questions.
Yeah, so that it would be that, you know, as soon as you're doing things outside of your camp for other people in Black Rock City, that's a commercial transaction.
Correct. The only person the only camp this camp member does this for is us. Nobody else. We don't say, hey, we can take your stuff for you or anything, because we know that's like selling stuff and, well, that's not allowed. So it's just
Spicy Roberto, feel free to email me and we'll have a further chat about it. No issues.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, let's try and keep the questions to things that are more generally applicable. And if you have, you know, things that are very, very specific to your camp and might not apply to others, then reach out to President or placement@burningman.org. What other questions do we have? So again, feel free to unmute yourselves and just ask your question.
I have a question. Am I on?
Yeah, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
So my project usually has very specific skills that are necessary that if I do it wrong, I'm going to murder a lot of burners at one time. I built the cloud last year, so it's like 18,000 pounds of stuff that go over people's heads. There's certain stuff I, can't really be done by volunteers, mostly because maybe I just don't have that network. I don't have a rigger or a VR operator and different kinds of special skills. And I also don't want to be a burden on heat, or sometimes, honestly, it's very difficult to get the resources on Playa from there. So in the context of kind of radical self-reliance and trying to, take care of my own build by myself more, trying to think, you know, what do I do? Because I'll be honest, I saw a lot of camps around me, not all of them, that did major scale projects, and there's no question, I know for facts, I talked to them, they have a bunch of hired staff that are building their huge art cars and different projects like that. I didn't have anything like that my year, which sucked in many ways, and I'm wondering where that line is, you know, specifically, because like this stuff is not subtle by any means. And is there any exceptions or something if there's stuff like, you know, like we really need somebody with like a specific skill set, and it's not just like, you know, come bolt some stuff together. If it's like a safety reason type thing, or special kinds of, you know, heavy equipment tools or whatnot you need to execute your project safely.
Thanks for that question. Who wants to take that? Because we discussed that kind of stuff. Yeah, Prince, go ahead.
This is why this was such a long conversation, and it was a hard conversation because it goes into how our theme camps are structurally built, and are they built with gathering people with the skills necessary and as a gift building that, or is it going out and finding people to pay to build your idea? We wanted to build an art car last year, but then we ran out of the manpower to do it. And so we could have, one of our campmates could have offered to pay for us to hire someone to do it and build it on Playa. But we decided, let's just take a break and let's go at it slower, or let's make the project a little smaller. So I think paying staff, if your staff is, if people are being paid within a camp to build, that would not be okay.
Would it also, that also count, what if there was, and again, does this count the same? Because I've had questions about this from some people that they said they've been builders on Playa for years, is the way they call themselves. And what they usually want is like, all right, if you can get me, again, I guess it's the whole transactional thing, but like, you know, if it's, again, we did the whole play acting stuff. They say, yeah, I'll help, but, you know, are you okay to kind of gift them per se, you know, like how, you know, you're not paying them, but you'll say like, all right, I got a couple extra shift pods and some DGS tickets and kind of help them out, because sometimes, you know, they might need some help getting on there. Is that again paying? I guess it's all paying. I don't know.
We really addressed that by saying a good faith.
Yeah.
We kind of put that in there as well. And then it's a challenge to build a city based on a gifting economy. It is not easy. The default world is built off of transactional exchanges. Our city is not. That's our North Star. And so the process of getting there is going to be difficult, and it's going to mean a lot of creativity in the process of getting there. We wanted to have an amazing kitchen set up in our camp, and we wanted to have amazing meals prepared. We could have went out and hired someone to prepare all of our meals for us and pay them to do so. But instead, over the years, we just got fortunate that we made friends with someone who wants to go to Burning Man, who's also a chef and who runs a kitchen. Now we have like 3 people in our camp who like to gift us the process of setting up the kitchen, and it's run 100% by volunteers from within the camp.
Okay, I have one last follow-up. Is just I heard some mixed new rules. I don't know, just for clarification, that like if there's a certain amount of work that's being done kind of pre-event, pre-ply, like, you know, during build week and strike, that's different from having stuff during the week, or is it all the same thing?
It's all the same thing. So it's your boots touch the ground. You are within the special recreational permit that Burning Man has, and within that zone. And so anyone who's being paid for anything on Playa needs to be either an OSS vendor that's approved or have an SRP. And we do not want anyone in theme camps or any camps to have an SRP themselves.
Yeah, I'd also just like to, I'd like to highly encourage these are all recorded, and you'll be able to see some of the other breakouts. There was one earlier that talked about a little bit about OSS, but in that there's a quick special recreation permit primer, just some information that every TCO should know about what a special recreation permit is. So I feel free to go back and reference that as well. I think Rambo, it really would be a good thing for you to review and would answer a lot of your questions. And like I said, anything with this type of gray area stuff, please feel free to email me as well, and we can have a chat about it. I put my email in the chat, president@burningman.org.
And also Papa Bear has put the release document in the chat, like the text that talks about that, and there's a whole link to a doc. It was linked in the new theme camp criteria, so maybe folks haven't seen it yet, but it's all explained in there. Dang.
A couple of other things I would put into this thing. The first is, so as a person who has to build structures out of truss, and if that truss fails, it becomes a life safety issue. I'm really quite familiar with the engineering requirements on this kind of thing. So getting someone who can do this kind of work, who's truly qualified to do this kind of work, to come out and do that for free on Playa, it's hard work to do. It's difficult and it's a narrow skill set. One of the things I would suggest to you is there's another skill set that's pretty difficult, and that is finding people who are willing and eager to do this kind of work as a matter of gifting. And that's your job. Your job is to go and find those people and get it done. It's not an easy job, but this is Burning Man. It's not the easy job here. If you want the easy job, there are plenty of other places to go. So that in some ways, this comes back to you. It's like, so yeah, you're going to have to do that. There's a variation on this thing with which Prince brings up every so often, which I love, which is, so if you have this, immensely difficult engineering problem that you want to bring as a theme camp, have you considered maybe doing grilled cheese? Which is a little bit snarky. I see you laughing, friends, right? But it's not meant to be like, you're doing it wrong, but it is this kind of thing where it's like, you're the person who chose this difficulty, and part of the difficulty is figuring out how to get it done within our community standards. So good luck to you. We're really behind you to do it, and also that's the bar you set for yourself.
That's fair. That's totally fair. But there was a question before from my Dusty Rhino neighbors, which was like, if you see people selling tickets or whatever, how do you make sure that everyone's on an even playing ground? Because, on the same level, I sure as hell saw the biggest cars, the most, the people, they were filled with paid staff. And I'm just like, well, what the hell, because I built this thing with like 3 people and 3 people strike with no pay this year, and it fucking sucked.
Yes.
And I can solve that, I'll solve it, but everyone should be on the same grounds,
Level, you had your hand up.
Yeah, Zane kind of touched on it, but I want to remind people, I know that a lot of this conversation is around what are the rules, what's acceptable, what's not, what does the BLM say is okay, what does Burning Man say is okay. Ultimately, our conversation stemmed from what do we want our culture to look like, and how do we preserve that culture within this kind of broader framework of rules and laws and regulations. And Zhang's question of why don't you just make some grilled cheese is important. I think that part of this effort was to say Burning Man has grown in a way that may or may not be the way we want to see for the next 5 or 10 years. And, I sort of given the analogy that sort of like when you have a plant that starts growing in a way that you're like, wait a minute, that's not where you should grow. It's about pruning that back a little bit. And I think that that's a harsh reality for people, because I think some people have been introduced to Burning Man and think this is the place to build the biggest, baddest, brightest, sparkliest things on earth. And it is, but it doesn't mean everyone needs to do that. It doesn't mean that, that bar is what you need to meet. Like, we use Mine Warrior as an example. Like, does everyone need to be Mine Warrior? No. Is that Burning Man? Yes. Is that only Burning Man? No. But I think the more we kind of forget that about what the culture is about, which is about the communal effort, which is about decommodification, which is about let's pool our resources rather than hire out and transact, that's what we're trying to curb and trying to course correct around and help people see that, yeah, like maybe you can build a cloud or a bit even bigger, badder cloud, but there are resources in the community that just require you to just talk to more people and see who can do it, or learn how to be, you know, get the certifications that you need to do the things that you want to do. That's part of radical self-reliance too. So I think that it's a complicated issue, but I think that we, and it's a fine line that we draw, but I would hate for us to just see like what BLM or Burning Man's policies say is okay be the guiding light. It really should be about what's the spirit of what we're trying to build and how do we do that in a way with the resources that we have.
Anybody else who wants to add to that?
And I didn't mean to kill the discussion by just
I think by kill the discussion, I think you mean gave a really good answer.
There's some good questions.
It's a great answer. And just to let you guys know, I do have my forklift license now. And what would be great if maybe the org or somebody, or maybe it already exists, I know there's ePly and whatever, but if there was some way to connect people that need specific skill sets or something, you know, kind of, I mean, maybe just going, I just went on like Reddit stuff. I don't know. I guess
That's a great idea.
good, and maybe because I was a second-time burner and I was based out of New York, I just didn't have enough of a network, and I just found it really hard to find people to help. And I didn't pay anyone year one, but I'll admit I was thinking about it this year, and that's part of why I'm here, is trying to learn a little bit more about what I should be doing, because it didn't feel right. But at the same time, like, it was me and two other guys building and striking this entire thing, and I had placement people going by me at the very end being like, where the hell's the rest of your camp? Why don't you have more people helping? And I'm like, I wish I had people helping. And like, in my head, I'm like, dude, I would have done anything to not go through that again. But yeah, all right, got to find a team. I'll just got to find resources to try to build that out a little bit more. That's on me.
Yeah, I want to jump in here. In the chat, people talked about Spark. That's a website on the burningman.org site that you can go to. It's crowdsourcing, support, volunteers, things like that that could help. I also want to give you props because I was the one saying what is going on. I mean, you were committed.
I forgot. You brought me a Gatorade. Thank you.
I did, yeah. You need, but I think where I wanted to go with this was ultimately, yeah, I mean, I think you're a great story and a great example of someone that said, hey, wow, I saw maybe Burning Man in a YouTube video or something, saw how amazing it was. I want to bring something just as grand and just as awesome, but then you fell short, you know, and I think that burned you, like literally, you know, you were dehydrated, I brought you a Gatorade. So I think that the point here is, like, I think you're a great story. Actually, I think this is a story that needs to be told more often, which is, hey, like, people make mistakes. People think you have to like outsource all these things. People think you have to bring the shiniest, flashiest thing. And that often that can lead to failure. And I think that dialing it back is important. Learning the skills that you can't figure out who it can do is important. Yeah, and I think the bottom line to me is, like, I think these examples are important to share because more and more people learning about Burning Man and kind of getting confused about how to do it. You know, I talked to, I think, the woman that moderates the Facebook group, the kind of the general snarky, like all-encompassing Burning Man Facebook group, and she says, you know, the question that she's seen that have risen over time is, at first it was people saying, hey, how do I go to Burning Man? Like, what supplies do I need? Over time it became, hey, I heard we need to join a camp. How do I join a camp to go to Burning Man? Like, that's like, how, is there a form? Is there an application? What are the fees? And more recently, people were saying, hey, who are the vendors that I need? Who's the porta potty supplier? Who's the water supplier that I need? And if you just think about that type of progression, like, they're so far from each other, right? Someone saying, hey, give me a shopping list of the things I need to bring versus, hey, who do I go to tell them to bring me my water? Those are really two different things. And I think that's exactly what we're trying to change and transform and tell the story about to course correct.
And on that note of stories of course correction, I'd love to invite Andy to tell his story.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for letting me jump in. So with StarStar, we've been out on Playa since 2011, and I've been coming out since, well, it's been 20 years, 1999, something like that. And we basically, after speaking with Level last year, we realized that, you know, there's some perceptions about our camp that weren't so positive that we wanted to address. And one of the ways that we decided to do that was by completely reorganizing the way that our camp is put together. And we used to use our business to organize our camp because it had so many details to it. It was a large camp, and it was really convenient to use our business. And for all of our accounts, our insurances, all sorts of things. And so what we did was like, okay, well, we have to get an SRP to do that. And so we jumped through all the hoops, and then we were contacted by some folks, and they said, you know, you guys aren't really supposed to be using the OSS gate. It's just this one camp, and next year we're not going to place camps that have SRPs. And so we said, okay, what can we do? How do we figure this out? So what we did was we looked for a structure. We actually made a social club. And this year, our goal, what we're doing is we're organizing our camp by using a 501c7 nonprofit social club. And so everybody that are members are a part of the camp. And being able to use that structure allows us to let go of the utilizing a business and become more compliant. Some of the other things that we've done is realized a point that was brought up is like, maybe we don't need to be making such a complex camp. So we've gotten rid of the modular offices and taking delivery of those. We have 50 less people in our camp. We have far greater participation across the board going into this year. And so those are just a few practical things that we've done to embody the ethos more completely. And I know that Star may have a perception around it as a convenience camp, and there are certainly a lot of things that we do that fall into that. However, we are first and foremost a theme camp, and we are secondly a mutant vehicle support camp, and thirdly, we're an artist support camp. So I think that's what's really important is that people challenge their perceptions too about who is doing what. Like, go up and talk to and interact with people. If you see them and it looks like their camp is insanely organized and things are in straight lines, don't assume that they have a bunch of paid workers. Go in and talk to them and just be like, hey, what's going on with your camp? You know, approach it with curious ignorance. I think that's a really important neighborly Burning Man-like thing to do, is to invite people into a relationship and understand what sort of agreements they have going on. And if you feel like they're doing it wrong, maybe have a conversation about that too. And just be like, hey, have you ever thought about trying this or trying that? Instead of crucifying somebody, you know, they may just be coming from a background where they have a very organized way of doing things. Maybe they're, you know, they're like OCD or something, and they want everything in straight lines. So just engage in the conversation and approach people with curious ignorance. There's a lot of solutions out there. And if you have a really big complex camp and you're trying to figure out how to decouple yourself from your business, you can reach me at andymanatstarroadhouse.com, and I'm happy to give you pointers on how to start making some of these big system-wide changes. They're not easy, and they may take years for you to wrap your head around it, to come up with processes around that, reducing your population, getting less complex, creating new legal structures that protect you. If you're doing something really wild out there, you know, you want liability protections. Those are important. You need legal structures to do that. So I think that you're going to be seeing a lot of resources coming out for people. And until they do, please do feel free to reach out. I'm happy to answer any questions anybody has about that.
Thank you, Andy. Jim, you had your hand up. Did you have a question specifically?
There we go, unmuted.
Yeah.
Yeah, once again, Admiral Painjoy, first time caller, long time fan of the show. Something that Andy Man said earlier struck a nerve. And first, let me say, radical self-reliance is probably my favorite of the Burning Man ethos. And another thing I want to say is I hate RVs. I have been railing against RVs along with a bunch of other people for years. However, RVs are here at Burning Man, and RVs are here to stay. As I mentioned, I'm a long-time theme camp runner, and trying to make a balance between having low camp dues and having radical self-reliance and not using as many outside services is like a dance that I've been doing for all these years. So I mention that because Spanky's tries to do some things that are self-reliant. We have, instead, I try to discourage the people in my camp from renting from like RV America. I hate those damn things. And if they are going to bring an RV, have it be your personal RV and turn it into art. You know, paint the outside of it, make it into, you know, a burner RV. Now that being the case, over the years we've developed a good contingent of our camp who did just that. They've purchased their own RVs, and we also have a couple of guys in camp that have a few RVs, and they bring them into Burning Man for Spankies and only for Spankers. They don't do this for other camps. We also, during early build, in order to save money, we'll rent one big truck, and we'll bring a bunch of the stuff from our ranch in California over the pass and bring it to Burning Man. Now we've got an empty truck. We can go back to Reno and buy, you know, 15,000 bottles of wine and umpteen cases of beer and whatever for the bar. We have somebody in camp that has a water truck, so we don't have to have an outside service for bringing water in for RVs. So what I'm getting at is, number one, is that the way that Burning Man would like to see a theme camp run? And second question on that topic is, are we in danger of becoming some sort of an outside service if the gate sees the same person coming in and out with these Spanker RVs, and they don't know that these RVs are just for Spankies, and they don't have a SRP, and they aren't an official business? They're just a member of my camp, and that's their specific job in the camp, to bring the Spankers RVs that are stored in Fallon, Nevada to La Playa.
I can answer that. Well, if you're more than welcome as your camp members to collectively organize your logistics and work together. Some people are great drivers. Some people don't like driving big trucks. If that's what your camp member wants to do to contribute, absolutely, that's fine. As long as what you're doing is not a commercial activity, and you're doing it for your camp to bring these great gifts to Black Rock City. Absolutely. I think I love Spankies. I've been there many times, more than I can remember. And yeah, I'd say, you know, keep doing what you're doing, especially, you know, RVs are straight up one of our biggest problems with leave no trace. So they leak, people don't know how to use them properly. So yeah, absolutely. People, you need to know the equipment that you have, and you need to take the responsibility to operate it properly and drive it in yourself. It's, you know, this is radical self-reliance in action. So yeah, like I said, Admiral Painjoy, if you have any other questions, feel free to hit me up. Email, I'd love to have a chat.
Well, one follow-up, being what I said, we have a lot of people during early build that are going in and out a lot. Is there any possibility, or has Burning Man ever considered, once you've gone in for early build and you've got your armband and you go back out for something else during early build, do you have to wait in the line? I mean, it used to be during early build there was no line, but now for the past 3 or 4 years, wow, the line during early build is really bad too. Any possibility of a special armband or something for people that are doing a resupply run during early build? Or a special line that they can go through instead of waiting in a normal line?
I don't think anybody here is qualified to answer this question. We'll take it to, you know, we'll log it, and we'll take it to somebody who can take that into consideration. This is specifically placement, and I'd also like to pass it to Papa Bear now, who wants to answer some questions in the chat. Is that still Is that still
Yeah,
up?
yeah. There's a yeah, there were a few comments that we kind of skipped by that I wanted to just address quickly. One, Ed Fletcher said it's not a playing field because we're not in competition. So true. We're a community. We're not in competition with each other. We're working together to build a city. So yeah, don't look at it like a competition between what you can bring to the city and somebody else can't. Look at it as how we can all bring something beautiful and make a great temporary city. Machine asked, my good buddy is renting a few RVs. Can he stage them on my already placed friend's place before the event? If it's renting a few RVs, that's a really good question. Can he stage them on my, if he's renting a few RVs through an OSS, as long as the camp is actually been accepted placement by a placer, yes, those RVs can come in. If that camp has not been placed by a placer and the people from that have not seen a placer yet to accept their placement, those RVs cannot come in. And then someone had some questions. We don't really like to talk about specific people. It's a breach of confidentiality, and it's just not cool. So I'm not going to talk about Mayan Warrior, but there's two questions there. One was asking, does an audit examine their financials? And I'm going to say that we are not in a place to be looking at people's financials. It's not our job, and it's kind of sticky and it's kind of weird. So we're not going to be doing that. We're not going to be asking to see your books. And also I wanted to point out from that PAYticipation link that we posted earlier and can post again in there, this is quoted, camp dues are a sharing of actual expenses incurred for the purpose of the activities, services, or uses of the camp and do not constitute payment to an individual. So we are kind of defining camp dues at this point because we sort of need to. What are camp dues collected for? They're collected to make your camp happen. They're not there to pay an individual in your camp or to make a profit. We're coming out, hopefully everything you put in has been used or is being saved to use for the next year. And there might have been one more. Give me 1 second. I think that was it. That was all of them.
Hey,
Cool,
PB,
Andy.
can I follow up with that real
Yeah,
quick?
go ahead.
So I think that's a really good point that you bring up, Papa Bear. You really kind of defining, I think the key word here is shared expenses, and people really need to, that are organizing camps, really need to understand that, you know, shared expenses is an awfully large bucket with gray edges. And people really need to ask themselves, like, is paying for this aspect of camp supporting the gift that we're giving on Playa? Is it in service to the gift? Is it in good faith to the gift? And that's a question for you guys to ask yourselves. You know, there's a lot of guidance that people can provide, but at the end of the day, like, the areas that you're covering with your camp dues adding to the gift? That's the real question. And shared expenses, again, I can't underscore that term fairly enough, because, you know, at the end of the year, you should have, like, there shouldn't be any profit. You know, it should be like a big fat zero, or the money is there to cover your storage, shared expenses around storage and that sort of thing. But I just wanted to underscore that shared expense component, and then supporting the gift of the camp.
Thanks, Andy. Yeah, go ahead, Prince.
It is okay if at the end of the year you do have more than $0 in your account for your camp. The point that we're trying to say is that money's for your camp. And if you're going to use it for a structure for next year or for whatever in the camp your leadership team wants to, that's fine, but it's not a profit going into someone's pocket, is what we're referring to.
Thank you all. These are not easy things to talk about, so really appreciating everybody's participation in that. Any more questions? We do have, you know, another good 15 minutes for questions. you can just unmute yourself or put your name in the chat or put your question in the chat if you have a question.
I'd be curious too, just even if people don't have a question to clarify, but if you have like an opinion about it,
Yeah.
This isn't just a one-way conversation. So, I mean, do you feel like this is on point with how you think things should run? Does this feel like not on point? You know, we know that there's lots of gray area that we're trying to make more clear, but I think part of Burning Man is that there will always be some gray. So we do rely on people's senses and smarts to resolve things too.
Logistic here, I'll go.
Yeah, go ahead.
And, you know, maybe this is, I mean, this is something that we think kind of philosophically about a lot. We're a pretty big camp. Like, you know, think in the, you know, over 300 range. We do 24/7 interactivity. There's probably about 10,000 volunteer hours that go into just getting everything out to Playa, like a 100-person build crew, all of it. And then running all the interactivity during the event. We have people now coming from like 40 countries. So for us to do what we do, kind of communal effort is really kind of important in terms of leveling the playing field for 2/3 of our camp that comes internationally, as opposed to like those of us that are local and can load up trucks and just drive to Burning Man. So we do communal effort around food, water, gray water, but everyone like in camp has the same like minimum volunteer hour participation. Everyone's participating in interactivity. Everyone's participating in running the infrastructure of camp. And probably 75% of our like camp cost share goes towards the interactivity. And one of the things that we've kind of done, like we've done over the last couple years, is try to model how we do our camp cost share in a way that kind of mirrors what Burning Man does with its volunteers. So based on the way that people like show up, like they say they're going to show up, we'll offer like a reduced camp share for the following year as a thank you, like a 25% reduction for what we call like campers in good standing. They do all their volunteer shifts, they stay for strike, they're super awesome, you know. People that are volunteering like an additional like 100 hours outside of Playa altogether, we do like a 50% reduction. So we, you know, try to, you know, do it kind of the same way that Burning Man does with its volunteers. I just want to kind of get some feedback on like how that feels, if there's things that we need to be thinking about there. Because we're certainly trying to like hit a balance that makes everyone feel like they've contributed, you know, equal amounts of kind of energy outside of Playa and really equally amounts of energy on Playa.
Logistic Admiral Painjoy. I completely sympathize with everything that you just said. That's one of the hardest things to do as a theme camp leader, trying to make everything egalitarian. If you're lucky, if you can get 30% of the people doing the lion's share of the work. There's the old rule, you know, 90% of the work is done by 10% of the people. If you're doing better than that, you're doing pretty well. And I also sympathize with the problem that you have where there's a lot of people that don't live in one area, like Northern California, for example, where you can have work party weekends where most everybody in your camp can come to those weekends. So yeah, there are going to be people that aren't able to participate in work parties and things like that, and clean up afterwards and storing things after the event. So At Spanky's, at least, I have a camp meeting at the beginning of the week when the event opens, and I point out all the people that have been doing the work party weekends and early build and so on. And I tell everybody else, it's time for you guys all to step up because they've been doing the lion's share of the work at this point. Give them a break. Let them really enjoy Burning Man. And you guys do extra work shifts. You know, they did a lot of work already, and it's time for you guys to step up. So we have like a minimum number of hours for work shifts at Spanky's per person. But if you're somebody that hasn't helped out and won't be able to help out geographically because of your situation, we ask that you do more. So yeah, as a theme camp leader with a lot of years of experience under my belt, I can say your problems are very common amongst camp leaders, and you're doing it right. Just keep struggling. Just stay on top of people about that.
Our growing motto is that build is for strikers.
Hey, Logistic Ian here. I can understand with your point of view. With our camp, it's such a large build. We necessarily have to tier our structure for campers coming in and our build crew because it is a significant. We require a full 7 days beforehand for a lot. So you're not out of normal. There's a significant difference between our campers that can't afford the time to come for build and strike, their camp fee versus people that can donate all of 3 weeks. So it goes from the, we camp reduction, the fee share structure goes down to maybe 10 or 20% of what the normal camp share cost is. And of course it is difficult for us, for myself as managing that budget and trying to break even. It's incredibly difficult when you have fixed costs and then you have volunteers wanting to come, and then for everyone wants their own little side deal. Maybe not do the full 7 days of build or not do strike. And it is one of the most difficult tasks is to try to break even or try to set a price that's fair and visible and to everyone. So you're not out of line there.
Yeah, we've really tried to resist doing kind of the tiered thing because I don't know, just about any way you slice it, it starts to feel like compensation, even like I get where you're at and it's not. That's what kind of drove us towards trying to emulate as a model, kind of what Burning Man does with its volunteer programs with like the Rangers and Gate, whereby they sign up, they come and do so many volunteer hours and then they're thanked for that in the following year. And we've also one of the things that we do a couple weird things. One, we intentionally hold a third of our camp space open every year for people that have never camped with us before. So not all of our regular campers even get to come every year because we hold that space. And we also do, if someone gets a low income ticket from Burning Man, they get a low income camp due. That's our evaluation process. If Burning Man says yes, we say yes, and it's 25% of the regular, and then even that is subject to reductions based on their ongoing participation and thank yous.
Can I jump in here?
Yeah.
I feel like I don't want to keep just being going back to the culture, but I think that what I hear being described is transactional exchanges, right? And I've experienced this in my own camps too, where people are like, well, I already did my 2 shifts, so you should stop nagging me for the things that I still need to get done because I already traded in my time and what you said my commitment was supposed to be. But this is far larger than that. And I think that when we turn a responsibility into shifts, and when we turn a certain number of shifts into a ticket, and when we turn that ticket into, it starts, I think that's exactly the problem. And I think that when we have built, I think we actually see this much more with larger camps, right? They're like, oh my God, I got to bring thousands of gallons of water and I have to do all this other stuff for all these people. It adds a complexity that can be really beautiful when it's done well. but also is a lot of stress for you guys as the leads, saying, oh my gosh, like I have to clean up this mess, or I have to like fix that plumbing, or I have to do all these things. You know, we hear all the time in placement about camps, either camps taking the year off or camps downsizing, saying, wow, that was like the best year I ever had on Playa, because I think people still feel like they have to build more, bring more, make it more complex. And then it starts getting to the space where we're actually commodifying the experience, saying, yeah, it is your Burning Man experience. By giving, you know, X number of dollars, in return you will get this type of food, and in return you'll also get this many shift expectations. That's the transactional exchange that we're trying to diminish. And I think that does mean, like, we got to look really closely at how you run your camp, and what is the core of what you're trying to bring. Is it to just wow everyone at how big and amazing you are, or is it actually to run a really a community that can abide by and actually really promote the 10 principles? So, you know, I sometimes I hear people that are just like so focused on like the principles and things like that, and I'm like, oh, just come on, it's not real. But it is real, you know, and there's ways to make it real. And I think that's the call that we are asking everyone to do, is look at what you're doing. Are you actually creating a transactional experience even with your own campmates? And are you kind of caught up in that wheel, and how do you unwind that? So just wanted to.
Thanks, Level. Hold on. We have a double hand here from Prince.
Oh, yeah.
And please remind you to not go too much into the specifics of your specific camp, because, you know, there's a lot of people here. And while a little bit of that is good, because we like examples, you know, talk directly to placement or OSS if you have your camp specific questions. Prince.
And I also, it was really surprising when we did, like, at the beginning of our conversation, what the average size of camps are, and what is considered a large camp. And I think it's important to remember that there's a remediation process within our own camps, and it starts within our camp. We don't have to have 200, 300, whatever the number is, people in our camp. And there should be if you have a camp where only 20% are participating, if you have a camp that's only 30% are participating, then as leaders, you have work to do in acculturating your camp down so that you can get those numbers up, which means that you might not leave space for 30 new people who haven't shown that they're participating, and you might want to restructure that so the people that are participating are your camp, are your community, and you leave us, you know. So it's just a way to think about that, is that I'm a camp lead too, and it's these are the same kind of things that we think about. But we have our scholarship program, and we have a camp, and we try to keep our camp fee. We have different tiers in camp fees, but our camp fees for a normal one, we try to keep it very affordable. And then we have a second tier that we ask for people to, if they are able to gift paying more, they're able to. And then that goes into helping cover the folks who need a scholarship. And just because someone gets a scholarship for a Burning Man ticket also might not mean that, it might be a double. They might want to pay full price for a Burning Man ticket, but then that additional $250, $350, whatever it is for the camp fee, that might be like, oh my goodness. So, and we don't say to them, so anyway, I'll just stop there. So just keep that in mind. We want everyone to participate, and our camps might need to be smaller for that to happen.
I'd like to add to that if I can. Dusty Rhino does the same exact thing that you just stated. And if somebody does need additional help, we ask for others to kind of, who are able to help out in that same exact way. To what we were speaking about before, this is not Dusty Rhino related, but another camp that I was in previously, more going back to people coming from abroad and how like their participation is and what they do, how they can add. one thing that I know that was very helpful is just being as open and communicative with them beforehand as possible, and making sure that you tell them, this is what we are expecting. If you can't give that, please come back to us and tell us what you can give, how you can help. We've had some people say they can't come that long because they are from abroad. The tickets are too expensive for flights. So they end up actually picking up additional shifts in camp, not just the 2 that is like required, to help out in that way. So then they can leave early to get to their flight, but they did still have the same exact kind of volunteer work. Also, if there's anything that I know that was really helpful, there are so many Excel documents and different documents that are out there. And we had a lot of our campmates that were from abroad put those together. Even though we gave them all of that information, it's really easy to turn it into a Google document or an Excel document from abroad. So just kind of thinking of small little things that can kind of take that off of the people's plate who are in like Northern California or wherever your camp is based out of, and those small things you can kind of delegate outwards. I know that that was very helpful. Yes, sometimes it definitely doesn't work, and there are people who kind of, you know, everybody breaks down on play at some point. If you don't, did you actually go to Burning Man? But it was very, very helpful when I was in that camp to just have those small little things, and it kind of showed those other people as well how much work is going into it, because a lot of people just don't know since they're not around it all the time. And so just kind of trying again, thinking outside the box.
Thanks, Taylor. Papa Bear, you wanted to cover some comments still?
Yeah, it looks like inventory read what they wanted to on the page, but I still think it's good to talk about. So inventory up here asked, I think there's still some confusion around compensating a camp member in money or otherwise, such as waiving dues, for providing a service, specifically a service they might make money from in the default world. Basically, you can't pay someone for work that they're doing on Playa. That's a straight no. It can't happen. That would require an SRP, and that can't happen. It was a hard conversation for our group. We talked about safety a bunch. Like, does it make sense for someone who's a professional rigger to be paid to do that work so that that camp is safe? But then we had to toss aside, look at the opposite side, but what makes their work more valuable than, say, a chef who's cooking for the food in the camp? and we had to just direct straight line of like, no, nothing is really acceptable with this. If it requires an SRP, it's not acceptable. And so when it comes to how you decide to scholarship somebody or to help someone to come to your camp to provide their amazing gift of architectural genius and rigging, that's up to you to decide how you do that. And that could straight up being, hey, we're reducing the amount of the camp dues, which cover the actual expenses of your camp and aren't a payment to anybody, so that you can come out here and do this. And that at some time that sort of hits the whole idea of a transactional exchange a bit. But this is the cultural thing we need to think about and talk about is at what point in time is it a transactional exchange versus are you helping someone to bring their skills and their gift to Playa?
I think maybe what I said is maybe being misunderstood, because we definitely don't pay anybody in camp at all. None. Everyone in camp participates. We don't have like a big issue there. I mean, people put in a lot of volunteer hours and building and running the interactivity and breaking it down and putting it away. My question is, and you know, no one, like, people come and do what they do. They all contribute to a shared cost. The only thing we do is at the end of the year, we look at how people showed up, and we'll thank them by saying, hey, if you're coming back next year, we'll offer you like a reduction in that cost as a thank you for what you did this year. In the same way that Burning Man's volunteer organization does that. What I'm trying to check in is on more of the communal effort kind of things, like water was a big thing. For multiple years, we made everyone bring their own water. We brought the water for the kitchen. Everyone had to bring their personal drinking water, personal bathing water. And then we looked at what would it be if we communal effort, we did the water together. And the cost wasn't really the factor. What pushed us in it is we realized that 300 people times like 6 or 8 of those jugs was thousands of plastic jugs that we were bringing to Playa and then taking off Playa, rather than sharing a tank and sharing a central water distribution system where everyone could come fill up. It's that intersection that I'm like trying to think about, like where camps are really kind of doing it right, but how are we from an external point of view, like some, he was mentioning, someone coming, they see things in like really straight lines and they assume, oh, that must be a plug and play camp. When like we do big things with a grassroots effort of a lot of people that work really hard. So like maybe, you know, like transparency, communication, but how do we like navigate that?
So we have 2 minutes left. I know we won't get to the end of this conversation. This will be an ongoing one. There seems to still be confusion about what's a transactional exchange and what is not. And I think we talked about that, you know, a lot today. But if somebody has like a really good way to explain it, now is the moment.
I can try quickly.
Go ahead.
So as most people know, we're an art car camp, and most of our DJs are actually friends, family, that kind of stuff. We have one very well-known DJ who comes out, who is also a friend of some people in camp. And for us, the way that we can kind of say thank you is, and I know that we at least did this last year. I'm not sure about other years, but it was very difficult for this person to find a ticket and get a ticket. It wasn't financially an issue, but they just couldn't find one. We were able to provide that ticket for them as a thank you for them to come on so that we could have this amazing time on Playa with everybody. And because of that, he was very grateful. We were very grateful, and we were able to do it all together. It wasn't a, if you come, or I can't really come unless you help me with this. It was a, we would really like, or I would really like to come, but it's just really difficult. Is there a way that you can help me? And so I think it's really more about like the verbiage that you're using and more of how these people are thinking that they more deserve it, rather than it being something that we can all help and provide and participate together. That's my own opinion.
Thank you.
Hope that kind of helps.
Seeing snaps there, a lot of it really is about the attitude of, you know, not expecting something back or not feeling entitled to something. So thank you all. This was a really hard conversation. And it's not over here. It's going to continue probably many years, but you know, there's things being put in place thanks to the work of this group that will help us filter out and draw some clear lines, you know, about things that are not okay. And as Level said, like prune things away in our community that have just grown because we didn't know that this was going to happen. I want to open it up real quick. Everybody who has to leave, feel free to hop off. Real quick appreciations, and also a reminder to fill out the post-event feedback form. It's been put in the chat multiple times. Here it is again. Thank you all for being here, for hanging in there. Thank you, Group 6. I love you all. Anybody else, any appreciations before we hop off? Feel free to just unmute and say it.
This was very helpful. Thanks.
Good.
Thank you, Simone, for being our fearless moderator. keeping us on track. It's just been such a pleasure for working with you for 6 months. I'll give you more shout outs later, but just thank you so very much.
I want to thank everyone who came here to ask these really hard questions. They're really hard. We've been asking ourselves these questions since September, and this stuff is hard. And we just dialed this into a 45-minute discussion of hardness. And so thank you guys for coming here for those hard questions and answers and digging into it. Appreciate you all.
And I would like to appreciate everyone that's involved in this. They took time. They want Burning Man to progress in a way that works for everyone. Thank you.
Great.
I also want to
everybody here.
Go ahead.
You guys are amazing at dealing with gray area. I'm so impressed with all the chatter.
Yeah, this conversation doesn't end, just to punctuate that point. We do plan to provide a few more pieces outside of just the websites that have been linked, so that you can hear the story and the kind of the nuance and all the things that we weighed. So look out for that. And I actually want to just reinforce people. I think probably 99% of you that are in this room are doing it right. You know, the fact that you're here and want to talk about it and want to listen and want to learn, like that, like you're the good kids, right? There are folks out there that aren't in this room that we hope you can engage with and dialogue with, you know, on Facebook or Spark or ePly or whatever. And if you just come across them in a party, because these, you know, I so respect all the things that people are bringing to Black Rock City. It is incredible. And I think we can do it even better. And I think that that's like, we're all here to try to figure out how to do that and to steer people in the right direction. So thank you for being here and being the ambassadors of all of this. Simone, you're muted.
Oops. Yeah. And with that, have a wonderful rest of your day, evening, night, morning, whatever it is where you are. Thank you again and take care. Keep your distance.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.